So, you want to know how to read more books or how to read faster. Well, about a year ago, I made a video about how I would never tell people how to do that. The reason being that I don't feel like it's that important how much you read, and certainly not how quickly you read. And I still believe that. However, I do know how you can read more and faster, and if you have advice to give, if you have insight, you should share it. So here's me sharing it. I still believe that when it comes to reading, it is quality over quantity. Not how much you read, but how well you read. How much you enjoy the reading you're doing. How much you learn. How much the books change you. If you read one book a month, but that book is really, really special and it really affects you, makes you feel smarter, more fulfilled, more engaged, more empathetic, great. You win. So that's kind of my first point, and that'll always be a major point for me, is that it's more important that you read well and that you enjoy doing it. That said, here are some tips for how you can read more books and how you can read a little bit faster as well. And I'm also taking into account ADHD here as well, as someone with ADHD. I am a book critic. Reading and reviewing books is my job. It's my entire life. But I also have ADHD, and that does certainly get in the way of things. So I've found ways to kind of cope with that and adjust. So if you are someone who doesn't read much because you have ADHD, hopefully some of these tips will help you specifically. Let's start with how to read more books. And I'm kind of talking here to people who don't read at all or barely read, but really would like to be more of a reader. To those people, I have 3 tips. First, ask yourself why. Second, think about your current interests and hobbies. Third, join a community. Now let's talk about each of these 3 in turn in a bit more detail. What do I mean by ask yourself why? What I mean is, what do you want to get out of reading? Why do you want to read more books or start reading books at all? What are you seeking here? There are a few common reasons why people read or want to read. You might want to become more knowledgeable. You might want to feel more emotionally fulfilled. You might want some escapism, and you might want to relax. For each of those, there are different kinds of books that you should be seeking out. Seeking out the right kinds of books for you, for your reason why, will help you get into reading. Quite often people talk about finding the right book or genre for them, but what does that mean exactly? Well, you have to ask yourself why you want to read more books. For example, if you're looking for knowledge, if you want to be smarter, if you want to just learn more about the world, you should be seeking out non-fiction. You could be reading philosophy books, history books, memoirs. If you're someone who's after escapism, you want to leave the world behind for a while, fall into a book, and entirely engross yourself in a new place, then you need to be reading science fiction and fantasy books. Fantasy may be more so because fantasy is true escapism, whereas science fiction is often allegorical and related to our real world. If you want to read to relax, romance novels or crime novels are where you want to go. Maybe not necessarily gritty political thrillers or police procedurals, but Agatha Christie style crime novels. These murder mystery style books are cozy and warm, and they really, really help you relax while also kind of engaging your brain. And if you want to feel more emotionally fulfilled, you should be reading clever literary fiction. Books that are considered classics, and modern books which today fall under the bracket of literary fiction. I've talked before in more detail about literary fiction in another video, which you can go watch because it's kind of a nebulous thing. But there are definitely authors out there whose themes are smarter than others, and if you want to feel emotionally fulfilled, they're the authors you need to go after. Next, look at your current hobbies and interests. What do you enjoy doing? If you love baking, or cooking, there are loads of great memoirs out there from famous bakers, cooks, chefs. Or a slightly more interesting approach is to look at travel non-fiction. There are loads of food-related travel books out there. People who spend a year living in a country and eating all of its food. People who travel around a continent or the entire world exploring its cuisine. There's loads of stuff like that out there if you love food. If you're a gamer, like I am, if you love video games, then again, science fiction and fantasy are going to scratch that itch for you. Think about your hobbies, think about your passions, think about how you spend your free time, and there will be types and genres of books out there for you. And I think the third and most important thing you can do is join a community. especially online. If you have Instagram or TikTok or you spend time on YouTube, there are enormous book communities out there for you. And you can let the algorithm do the work for you. Go on Instagram, for example, and search for books. Search for a specific genre. Search a tag like new books. And start following the accounts of people who blog about books. Bookstagrammers, book talkers, booktubers. Start following us and let us guide you. The more you follow, the more the algorithm will show you. And from there, you'll start following the accounts of authors and publishers. Don't underestimate how active publishers are on social media. And as you do this, you will start building a community. Suddenly, you will find a taste for certain genres and styles. And reach out to people, leave comments, ask questions. The bookish online community is a wonderful, wonderful space. Very inclusive, very broad, very dynamic. You'll make friends. You'll find opportunities out in the real world, like going to signings and book events and Q&As and new book releases. You can join a book club. I'm not a huge book club fan, I kind of struggle with them, but that's just me. Also, go to bookshops and ask the booksellers. They are very knowledgeable people. Bookshops are great spaces to hang out. If you go to a bookshop that has a cafe, you can pick up a book, buy it, and sit and read it and just soak up the atmosphere. Community is a wonderful way to read more books. Immerse yourself in books. Go to bookshops, go to libraries, talk to booksellers, and when you're online, spend your time on social media surrounded by books and the people who talk about them. Even if you don't have a clue about literature at all, just start following these accounts and you'll start getting interested in the things that they talk about. Next, let's talk about how to read faster. This is kind of a contentious point, and I'm certainly not an expert in this. I actually read quite slowly, and ADHD plays a part in that. But because I've made a career out of reading and writing and talking about the things I read, I've had to adjust. I've had to discipline myself, and I'm going to pass some of that on to you now. I really, really hope that it helps. This first one feels like a really, really obvious point, almost patronizing, and that is to read shorter books. But I do have a point here, so stick with me. Obviously, reading shorter books takes less time. Therefore, you can read more of them. That doesn't mean you're actually reading faster, but you will be able to read more books. That's a really obvious point though, and I want to go beyond that. For those of you who don't read a lot or don't read at all but would like to, something that's really important to know, and a lot of people don't know this, is that too many books are unjustifiably long. There are so many books out there that are way, way longer than they should be, and so many of the great works of fiction throughout human history are really, really short. My favorite novel is Frankenstein. It's only like 250 pages long. Many of the best works of literary fiction, the smartest kinds of books, the most thematically dense books, philosophically heavy books, they're all pretty short. So often the best pieces of fiction are under 300 pages long, so seek out shorter books. But there's another side to this, and this is just coming from my own personal experience. But I often find that if I pick up a book that's 100 pages long, I will actively find myself reading it faster because I can see the end. It helps me focus as someone with ADHD. I can see the finish line. I know I can read 100 pages in a single sitting in an hour or two if I really put my mind to it. And because I can see the end, because I can feel the pages turning faster, I get this momentum, I get this focus. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. When you open up a massive book, you know you're in for a massive undertaking. You know it's going to take a long time. It's going to be exhausting and it's going to be an effort. But when you read a short story or a book that's 100 or 200 pages long, it's kind of encouraging. There's this momentum to it. And you'll find yourself reading faster because you're like, yes, 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 I'm getting through this. Good, good, good. Focus, focus. That's how I feel. I often find that I literally read a shorter book faster because the end is in sight. I can see the finish line from the very beginning. That's not to say I want to get through it faster, but it helps me focus because it's like you can see the end of your goal, and that's great. And another important thing to think about when you read shorter books is that it means you can read more diversely. And reading diversely is obviously a beautiful, wonderful thing. You could have a massive stack of 100 to 200 page books next to you, and that will be an incredibly diverse stack of books. There might be a poetry collection, a short story collection, a short classic, a novella, A comic book, a manga, you'll have a massively diverse stack next to you. In fact, comic books and manga are really good things to check out if you want to read a little bit faster. Something about the combination of words and images and the flow that it creates allows you to read more quickly, at least in my experience. I'm a big comic book and manga reader, and I often find myself tearing through them at a much faster pace. Not just because there are fewer words, but because the immersion level feels even higher sometimes. Another thing you can do is read everywhere. Quite often, when you have a spare moment, you pull your phone out. This is something we all do. You're standing in line. You're waiting for the kettle to boil so you can make a cup of tea. You're waiting for the bus, or you're on the bus. There are so many instances where we find ourselves pulling out our phones and scrolling just for 30 seconds because we're waiting for something. Switch that up. Instead, pull out a book. Have a small book that you can fit in your pocket or in your bag. And every time you're waiting for something, you pull the book out instead of your phone. Read everywhere, anytime you can. Bring a book to the kitchen, flick on the kettle, and read a page while the kettle boils. You're downloading an update on your computer, pull out a book and read a few pages. You're waiting for the bus, you're sitting on the bus, read your book. Have a book in your hand whenever possible. I do. In fact, I read when I walk. This is one of my weird reading habits, is I will sometimes read while walking down the street. I started doing it back when I lived in China because it's a very chaotic and busy place and I needed something to focus on and distract me from all the noise around me. I don't recommend doing that. You're standing at a pedestrian crossing, waiting for the light to go green, read half a page of your book. Develop this mindset that every moment where you're not doing something is an opportunity to read, and that'll make you read faster and read more. And finally, and this is kind of in direct contrast to what I just said, set aside a specific time. Again, this is great for people with ADHD. Find yourself a comfortable space in your home. It could be a corner like this. I'm sitting on the floor right now, surrounded by my books. It's a really comfy space. Get some cushions, get a beanbag chair, or sit in an armchair, the corner of your sofa, wherever you like to read. Take your phone and put it in another room. Make sure you don't have any other screens around you like your TV or your laptop. And give yourself half an hour or 1 hour to do nothing but read. There are no distractions around you at all. It's just you and the book. This is your time to read. You have 1 hour. How much can you read? How much can you focus? This is something I have to do a lot. I quite often read sitting on my sofa, and I have my phone just sitting there on the arm of the sofa, and I will read a few pages of a book and then check my phone constantly. It gets to the point where I start feeling a little bit sad. I get angry at myself. And so I end up putting my phone somewhere else. If you're the kind of person that can read with music, get wireless headphones, put on a playlist, put the headphones on, put your phone in another room, and just sit there. It's you and the book and some music, and that's your lot. That's exactly how I read. All of the time. You'll probably find that you learn to read faster by doing this because you have nothing else to think about, nothing else to do, no distractions. It's you and the book. Go. But please don't ever make this a kind of competition with yourself. Don't set yourself challenges. I hate challenges. They ruin the experience for me. Reading is a beautiful thing. It is fulfilling. It is exciting. It is relaxing. It is so many things. And that's why I said before, figure out why you want to read more or read faster. What's the point here? Because reading is gorgeous. At least I think so, because it's literally all I do. But do not stress yourself. Do not set yourself a challenge unless you're the kind of person who really likes challenges. I just find them too stressful and kind of pointless because that's not what we're here to do. We're just trying to find techniques for reading better, reading faster, reading more. And if you don't want to do any of this, great. Just read better. Read to feel fulfilled. Read to find enjoyment. Read to get smarter. Whatever it is. Just read and enjoy it. I really hope this has helped. Subscribe for books.